Hi everyone, Dylan here, and today we'll be discussing about executive condominiums. So the key difference we want to understand is at the 5-year MOP mark versus the 10-year privatization mark, is there a price increase that is good to hold until the 10 years mark? So a lot of sellers definitely will be holding or intending to hold to the 10-year mark because they feel that there's a chance that the price can go up much higher when it's privatized. Okay, so now, without further ado, let's go deep into the analysis to understand clearly whether or not does this really make a difference at the 5-year versus the 10-year mark. So first thing first, we want to understand is the 3 different phases of EC purchase. The first one is you buy at a brand new phase. Second one is you buy it at the 5 years MOP phase. And of course, the last one, you will buy it when it's privatized, which is the 10-year mark. So now we want to understand, in terms of these 3 different time frames, what is the qualifying criteria that you need in terms of these 3 different time frames? First one, when you buy a brand new EC, the citizenship has to be at least 1 Singaporean, and you need to fall into either one of these eligible schemes. Of course, the income ceiling cannot exceed the 16,000, and you are subjected to a mortgage servicing ratio, which is the MSR in terms of the loan calculation. And next is the 5-year MOP EC. So when you buy it at a time when it's MOP, you can be either a Singaporean or a PR to purchase. You are not required to have any of the schemes. There is no income ceiling to fulfill, and you'll be subjected by a total debt servicing ratio, which is the TDSR. And last but not least is the 10 years privatized EC. Everything remains the same except for the citizenship, which is the foreigners can come in now to buy your property. And a lot of sellers are asking me now that, at this point of time when foreigners can come in to buy my property, shouldn't there be a good increase in the price? So now let's take a look at an example of the Quintet. The Quintet was launched in 2003 and is MOP in 2011. If you can see from 2011 to 2013, there is a price increment at the MOP time. But following that, the price actually remained quite stagnant. So in this analysis today, I've excluded all the data from 2020 onwards because at 2020 there was the COVID case, and because of this COVID, it actually pushes up our prices to another level in today's market. So why did I exclude this data? Is because with such a situation that happened that pushes up the prices, it doesn't reflect a fair value of what is going to happen in the past. So why we want to use previous data is because you can see clearly the trend of all these ECs and also all the private prices to make a very good judge of your decision whether should you be moving forward or not. So another example that we look at is La Casa. La Casa is launched in 2005, MOP in 2013, and privatized in 2018. If you can see at 2013, there was also a price increment, and from the privatization onwards, actually you can see that the price also remained very stagnant. So the biggest question is, why the privatization time, the price is still stagnant? Because there's supposed to be an influx of foreigner buyers that are coming in, right? So the first thing we want to see is, who are the buyers that are actually buying in at the privatization time? If you can see from this profile, there's only 0.23% of foreigner that is going to come into the market at that point of time for this particular project. And if you can look at other ECs, this also performing the same way. So the question now is that before you decide whether you should hold or sell your property, you need to understand who are your buyers that is going to come in, the demand and supply of the location. This is the most important thing. The second thing that is happening, because now foreigners, when they buy a property in Singapore, they have to pay a hefty stamp duty of 60% to the government. And this also deters them from going into most of the property in Singapore. That is why we have to be very clear today. If let's say, for example, you're waiting to hold or you're waiting to sell, you must know clearly when is the time that you should be selling and which one will benefit you more in terms of the purchase. So now we want to see the biggest difference in terms of a brand new EC versus a 5-year MOP EC and also the privatized time. The biggest difference that you can see is during the 5-year and the privatized time, the PRs and foreigners can enter into your particular EC. And the loan calculation is very different. From at the brand new time, you are using an MSR, but at the 5-year and the privatized time, they're using a TDSR. So now the biggest question we have to ask is, what is the difference between a MSR versus a TDSR? If you can see for MSR, they're using 30% of your income to give you a loan. But for TDSR, they're using 55% of your monthly income and of course, taking away your debt obligations, for example, your car loan, study loan, rental loan, before they do the calculation. So what we want to understand is we want to see what is the biggest difference in terms of the loan amount that you're eligible at this point of time. Assuming today you have an income of $10,000 and you are 30 years old, we look at two different loan calculations. The first one is the MSR, where you buy into a brand new EC, your loan amount is around 630,000. But at the 5-year MOP EC mark, you are subjected under the TDSR, which is your loan amount can go up to close to around 1.15 million. So this is the difference between an MSR versus a TDSR, that you have an increased loan amount. Meaning to say that for a buyer to come in at the MOP time, they can loan more so they can afford a higher price in terms of your EC as well. That's why you can clearly see that at the 5-year MOP mark, your price actually surged. Why? Because buyers are more capable to afford your property at that price. And the biggest difference now we want to see is the 5-year versus the 10-year. Am I right? So if we see at the 5-year and the 10-year, actually there is no much difference in terms of the loan calculation. That's why you can see that there is no difference between the 5-year mark versus the 10-year mark for a buyer, because the loan amount that is eligible for them is the same. And these are the buyers that actually help you to push up the price at that point of time, whether it's the 5-year or the 10-year mark. Because when they're able to get a higher loan, they will definitely be able to give a higher price for your particular property. So the next question we have to ask ourselves is, at this point of time, do we want to hold the property or do we want to sell? We have to know that whether or not at the 10-year mark, is there a demand of new buyers that is going to come in? And this is a question that a lot of people are asking in today's market, given that there is quite a big amount of ECs that is going to hit the privatization time in these couple of years. So now let's take a look at some other examples to understand what is the trend of these ECs as well. If we look at Privatization, it's launched in 2011, MOP in 2018, we can see at the 2018 period, there was a surge in price. And after that, there's actually a stagnant in price as well. Next, we look at Esplanade Residences. It was launched in 2010 and MOP in 2019. If you can see from 2019 onwards, there is also a surge in the prices. And following that, there was a stagnant in price as well. Up at Tampines, launched 2011, MOP 2019. You can see at the MOP time, there's a price surge, and following that, the price stagnant as well over here. Next, Watercolors, launched 2012, MOP 2020. You can see there's a price surge over here at this point of time, and after that, the prices stagnant as well. So what I want to bring to your attention is that most of the ECs actually perform the same way, and you have to understand this thing because a lot of sellers are always waiting for the privatization time. But actually at this privatization time, there is not much influx of new buyers that doesn't push up your demand in terms of the property. That is why we can see for all the examples that I've shared with you, most of the time, the prices are quite stagnant after the MOP phase. And the main reason is because there isn't any influx of new buyers into the market at that point of time. So today as a seller, if you are thinking that, should I wait to the privatization time, you have to be very clear. Who are the buyers that's going to come into your property at that point of time to pay you that price? Because first thing, we understand clearly that the MSR and the TDSR, there is only a difference between the brand new and the 5 years MOP. At the 5 years to the 10 years, there is no change in terms of the loan calculation. So for a buyer with a similar income, they will still be able to loan the same amount. That doesn't give them a higher capability in terms of their loan to pay for your property as well. So in summary, what we want to understand is that whether or not should you be holding on to your property at the 5-year mark for the 10-year mark, or should we be selling straight at the 5-year mark? And first thing first that we went through just now is the profile of the buyers. We want to understand clearly at the 5-year mark versus the 10-year mark, are there new buyers that is going to come in, which is the foreigners? Is there really a big portion of foreigners that is going to come in to buy your property at the 10-year mark? And of course, the next one is that at the 10-year mark, if there isn't any new foreigners that is going to come in, will it really push up your prices so much? Based on the 6 examples that we went through today, we can clearly see whether or not it's after MOP or privatization time, there isn't a strong push in terms of the prices. The main reason is because there isn't a high demand of buyers that's going to come in at that point of time, and it doesn't help to push your price. Also, because of the loan calculation, there isn't a big change during the 5 years versus the 10-year mark. It's still under the total debt servicing ratio. Meaning to say that as a buyer today, you are still subjected under the same loan amount. You only can afford that same amount at the point of time of 5 or 10. And of course, what we went through today, the 6 project, all the price trend are quite similar. If you can see any other ECs, most of them are also behaving the same way. So if today you are an owner that is holding on to an EC that just MOP or have MOP for about 2 to 3 years, you might want to think whether is it time for you to sell or is it still want to hold for it until there's a difference in the price. The only time that there will be a change in prices is only when there's an influx of a demand or a strong income earner that can pay for your property. So this brings to my last point. If today you are sure that your particular EC at the 10-year mark or after MOP, there will be a sudden influx of new demand that is going to come in to buy your property. For example, a cluster of HDB that is going to MOP that is really near your EC, there might be a chance that such thing will happen. But if today we are waiting for the foreigners to enter, then we have to ask ourselves very clearly, is there so many foreigners that is going to enter into our EC at that point of time of the 10-year? That is why we want to understand very clearly the demand and the supply. Why? So that you can be very sure, is it the right time for you to let go or is it the right time for you to hold on to your current property? And most important, you have to understand in these 1 or 2 years that your MOP EC has reached, you need to know clearly, is the performance of your property still going healthy? Why? Because if your performance of the property is not going healthy and is on a downward trend, it is better to think twice and see what can you do with your property to swap to a better performing one so that you don't lose out in terms of the profits going forward. With that, I end my video today, and if you have any questions that you are unsure whether today you should be selling or whether should you be holding on to your property, you can always drop me a WhatsApp. I will help you to analyze your situation more and give you the best solution for your current property. If not, you can also join my Telegram community because every day I will be putting a lot of updates into that chat for buyers and sellers to understand clearly what are the market updates in the current situation and how it can benefit you going forward. Thank you.